Good evening. 2 days ago, on Saturday, a federal court of appeals officially blocked the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for private businesses. They did so because the judges in the case believe that there may be serious constitutional issues with the new rule. Meanwhile, according to a new study that was just released, it found that the effectiveness of all three of the vaccines that are available in America, they have decreased dramatically over time, with two of the vaccines being less than 50% effective after 6 months. And one of the vaccines is only 13% effective. And in fact, it's exactly news like this that is having many organizations across the entire country push vaccine boosters. In fact, the NBA, they are now recommending that the players in their league get the booster shot or, once again, face restrictions. And then lastly, you might have already heard that over on the CDC's website, they have recently made a very quiet revision. Without much fanfare, without letting people know, the CDC changed the definition of the word vaccine. It now officially no longer means that you are immune from infection. Now, of course, that was several months ago, and we did already report on it. However, these newly obtained emails that came out of the CDC, they give a bit more insight into the thinking behind the officials who made this alteration. Let's go through it all together. This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman, from the Epoch Times. And now let's begin today's discussion by talking about the federal vaccine mandate. As you might have already heard, 2 days ago, on Saturday, a federal court of appeals officially blocked the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for private businesses. More specifically, the court issued a temporary block of this mandate while the case is still progressing its way through court because, according to the judge, there may in fact be constitutional as well as statutory issues with the Biden administration's vaccine requirement. Here's specifically what the court wrote in this very short court order. Quote, "Because the petitions give cause to believe there are grave statutory and constitutional issues with the mandate is hereby stayed pending further action by this court." Now, let me just again highlight that the halting of the vaccine mandate by this court order that came from these two judges is temporary. While the case is still moving forward, the fundamental issues will have to be debated in court, but until now, the order is temporarily stayed. And so you might be wondering, which case is this anyway? Because as you've likely heard, there are many lawsuits being filed against the federal government over their new vaccine mandate. Well, the specific case, it was brought forth by a team of petitioners, such as several businesses, mostly located in the southern part of the country, multiple individuals, as well as several states, including the states of Texas, Utah, and Mississippi. And this group of petitioners, they are arguing that the nationwide vaccine mandate, which is of course promulgated as an emergency temporary standard by the Department of Labor, they are saying that it should be struck down since it exceeds the agency's authority under the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Now, to back up a little bit, I'll give you some context here. The Occupational Safety and Health Act was passed back in 1971 during the Nixon administration, and its primary goal was to empower the federal government to force American companies to provide their employees with a work environment that's free from, and this is what the bill said, recognized hazards. These are things like exposure to toxic chemicals, excessive noise levels that can damage your hearing, dangers from using industrial-grade machinery, exposure to excessive heat or excessive cold, as well as unsanitary working conditions. This is also the law which created OSHA, which of course stands for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This is the agency that is empowered to enforce this particular act. It sits underneath the Department of Labor, and OSHA is the specific agency that issued these new vaccine guidelines. However, according to the petitioners in this lawsuit, they argue that for one, this vaccine mandate goes well beyond the scope of authority that OSHA possesses, since instead of being a work-related hazard, COVID is more of a society-wide danger. And then secondly, the plaintiffs in this case, they argue that the mandate doesn't even make sense because determining whether COVID is a workplace hazard or not, well, it depends on many factors, such as the employee's age and the employee's health status, etc., rather than whether they work for a company that has over 100 employees or not. Here's, in fact, what the lawyer for these plaintiffs, here is what they wrote in a letter to the judges. Quote, "In an attempt to impose a nationwide vaccination mandate without approval from Congress, the executive branch has couched its COVID-19 vaccine mandate as an emergency workplace rule affecting nearly 100 million Americans. But the ETS is neither a workplace rule nor responsive to an emergency. Now, to pause here just for a quick moment, I think that what he's saying here is worth highlighting because, in effect, what the argument that they're making is that the OSHA rule basically bypasses Congress and instead has the executive branch make wide and sweeping new regulations, aka laws, that affect almost everybody in the country. And the argument here is that essentially they are attempting to do this to bypass Congress by using a technicality with OSHA. So then the letter from this lawyer continues by saying this, quote, "Vaccination status is a public health issue that affects people throughout society. It is not a hazard particular to the workplace, and there is no need to use an emergency rule to address a pandemic that has been going on for nearly 2 years. Congress did not grant OSHA such sweeping powers in its authorizing statute." And as we mentioned earlier, the two judges who are presiding over this case, they agreed with this argument. They agreed that there are real constitutional issues here, and therefore, while the case is playing itself out in court, they suspended the rule from OSHA. Now, the lead petitioner in this case, he's a man named Brandon Trusclair. He's a business owner who employs about 500 people. He was pleased with his court's decision. Here's in fact what Brandon had to say. "This ruling is an incredible first victory for all Americans. The appeals court quickly realized that the Biden employer vaccine mandate would cause great harm to businesses like mine." Likewise, Mr. Jeff Landry, who is not only the Attorney General for Louisiana, but he's also one of the petitioners in this case as well, he likewise welcomed this court's decision. Here's what he said in the statement. "The court's action not only holds Biden from moving forward with his unlawful overreach, but it also commands the judicious review we sought. The president will not impose medical procedures on the American people without the checks and balances afforded by the Constitution." Now, on the flip side, however, over the past several days, officials from the Biden administration, they have publicly come out and said that they are very confident that this new OSHA rule will be able to withstand the legal challenges that it is now facing from multiple directions. In fact, we here at the Epoch Times, we reached out to the Biden administration for comment, and Ms. Seema Nanda, who is the Solicitor of Labor, she said that the administration is prepared to defend their mandate in court. Here's specifically what she wrote to us in an email. "The U.S. Department of Labor is confident in its legal authority to issue the emergency temporary standard on vaccination and testing. The Occupational Safety and Health Act explicitly gives OSHA the authority to act quickly in an emergency where the agency finds that workers are subjected to a grave danger and a new standard is necessary to protect them." Now again, as to what will ultimately happen, well, we will just have to wait and see how this court ultimately decides, and then likely it'll be appealed all the way, very likely, to the Supreme Court level, because this is obviously a case that will affect the entire country, and you can rest assured that no matter what, it will be appealed by either side. If you'd like to read more about this particular case, about this restraining order that's been placed on the Biden administration, or the different comments and legal arguments that are playing themselves out, I'll throw all that into the description box below this video for you to check out. And all I ask in return is that you take a quick second to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. That way, the YouTube algorithm will be forced to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. And now, before we move on over and discuss how a new study found that the vaccine's effectiveness is as low as 13% in fighting off infections, I would like to take a quick moment and introduce our sponsor for today's episode, and I will do so from the sound booth. That's right, Roman. The sponsor of today's episode is an awesome company called American Hartford Gold. As I'm sure you're aware, the rate of inflation right now in this country is accelerating like crazy. I mean, everything from the cost of lumber, cars, houses, food, gas, everything is increasing at an accelerated pace. However, in my opinion, what the most amazing aspect of the system is that you can take this money, which I actually think is as fake as monopoly money because the Fed and the Treasury just print this out of nothing, and you can use it to buy real money from American Hartford Gold, which is gold and silver coinage. Take a look. This is a box that I get every single month from American Hartford Gold sent to me because I believe it's a great hedge against inflation. This is something that has had value for 5,000 years. It's had value across the world in Russia, China, America, India. I mean, this is the real stuff right here. This is a beautiful, actually Canadian maple. And this is right here is some silver coinage. I don't know if you can see how shiny and beautiful it is. Yeah, but I just get these every single month because I believe that unfortunately the US dollar will eventually fall as the global reserve currency, as sad as that is. And I just want to hedge against those people in Washington, D.C. continuously printing our prosperity into oblivion. And I would highly recommend that you do the same. Go on over to the website for American Hartford Gold and consider doing business with them. They're an awesome company. They sponsor a program like ours, so they obviously care about the truth getting out there, but they also have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have a great customer support staff when you call them. They're super friendly, and they make the entire process super simple, because not only can you get these packages here delivered directly to your doorstep, but you can call them up and set it up so that you can actually get gold and silver directly deposited into your IRA account, again, making it all super simple. And right now they're offering a special to viewers of Facts Matter, where depending on how much you buy, how much gold and silver you buy, they will throw in $1,500 worth of free silver on your first order. So give them a call at 866-242-2352 or text Roman to 65532. Also, I'll throw a link to their website down in the description box below. And American Hartford Gold, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Now, Roman in the studio, back to you. And now let's move on over and talk about the vaccine's effectiveness. According to a new study, which was just released yesterday, the effectiveness of the 3 different vaccines that are currently available here in America has declined tremendously over the past several months. In fact, according to this new study, 2 of the vaccines, specifically the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, their effectiveness at protecting against the infection has fallen below 50% when you measure it out over 6 months. The study itself was conducted by researchers from the Public Health Institute, the University of Texas School of Public Health, as well as the VA Medical Center, and then once it was completed, it was ultimately published in the journal which is named Science. And these researchers conducted the study by following around 780,000 veterans between February 1st and October 1st, so an 8-month span of time. And what they were looking for was the rate of COVID infection between the vaccinated veterans and the unvaccinated veterans. And here is the data that they found broken down by the different vaccine manufacturers. With Moderna, the vaccine's effectiveness at preventing infection was 89% in March, but it dropped all the way down to 58% in September. Then during that same time frame, Pfizer's vaccine went from being 86.9% effective to only 43.3% effective. And then the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it went from being 86.4% effective all the way down to 13.1%. And by the way, I double-checked that number just to be sure, and that is in fact not a typo, 13.1%. So that was all in regards to infection. However, the researchers were also looking at death rate, the vaccine's protection against death, and that has likewise decreased over the span of 6 months, particularly among older people. And so they found that between July and October, the effectiveness of these vaccines at preventing death, specifically among those who are 65 years or older, was 75.5% for Moderna, 70.1% for Pfizer, and only 52.2% for Johnson & Johnson. The researchers concluded by saying this: our results suggest vaccines are less effective in preventing infection associated with the Delta variant. All right, there were a few things that I failed to mention during the in-studio filming of that segment. The first one has to do with the significance of that 50% threshold, the reason it was highlighted in that article's title. If you remember, during the end of the Trump administration, Dr. Stephen Hahn was in charge of the FDA, and he came out at one point and said that if the vaccine did not meet an effectiveness rate of 50%, then it should not be approved by the FDA. So that was why we highlighted that 50% threshold mark. The other aspect of this study, the reason it's highlighted, the reason that I believe is important, was that while other studies have come out that showed that the effectiveness of the vaccine wanes over time, this was actually the first study that examined all 3 of the vaccines that are currently available here in the United States. And it shows that their efficacy is going down. So that's why this particular study is significant. And also, the findings of this study, the one that we're examining here, comes actually on the heels of 2 other studies, both of which were released as preprints, that likewise showed that vaccine effectiveness wanes over time, especially when you're looking at it from the time of the initial injection. So for instance, there was one study that came out of Sweden where the researchers, they were using the data from their nationwide registry, and they found that at day 15, meaning 15 days after the initial injection, the Pfizer vaccine had an efficacy rate of 92%. But that continued to wane until it reached day 121 to 180, so in that span, where the Pfizer vaccine its effectiveness dropped from 47% down to 30%. And then this is what the researcher said, quote, from day 211 and onwards, no effectiveness could be detected. Meaning, according to this study from Sweden, after day 211, they could not even detect any effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine. Likewise, in that same study from Sweden, they said that the Moderna shot also declined in effectiveness, but they said that it did retain some of their protection after day 181. So that's some of the significance here. By the way, we did reach out to the CDC as well as these different companies, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, for comment on this particular study that we've been mentioning here during the in-studio portion. However, none of them got back to us thus far. Now, I'll go back into the studio and talk a bit about booster shots. And then furthermore, these researchers suggested that their study, it can be used by policymakers to push for booster shots. Here's in fact what the lead researcher in this study said in a statement, quote, our study gives gives researchers, policymakers, and others a strong basis for comparing the long-term effectiveness of COVID vaccines and a lens for making informed decisions around primary vaccination, booster shots, and other multiple layers of protection, including masking mandates, social distancing, testing, and other public health interventions to reduce the chance of spread. And indeed, that looks like it is exactly what is happening. Booster shots are now getting recommended across the entire country, and in some industries, not getting the booster shot will actually make you be treated like you are once again unvaccinated altogether. In fact, let's take a specific case as an example. The NBA has just informed all of the players in the league that they're recommending that if they don't get the booster shot, they will face not only increased restrictions, but they will once again have to be subject to game day testing. Now, specifically in that statement, they said that any of the NBA players who received a Johnson & Johnson vaccine at least 2 months ago, or a Moderna or Pfizer vaccine at least 6 months ago, they must either get the booster shot or they will face game day testing as well as other restrictions. Now, by the way, at the moment, the NBA has made this a quote-unquote recommendation. However, that is also what they said about the initial vaccine requirements several months ago. So if it follows that same trajectory, very likely they will adopt this as a full-blown rule rather than just a recommendation. If you'd like to read more about either this new study that came out of the University of Texas or about this new recommendation from the NBA, I'll throw all that into the description box below this video for you to check out. And again, if you haven't already, just take a quick moment to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. However, since we're talking so much about vaccines, let's take a quick moment and discuss what the definition of vaccines actually is, and specifically about how that definition has been changing. Now, we have already discussed on a previous episode how the CDC very quietly changed the meaning of the term vaccine. And as a quick reminder, between 2015 and August 31st of 2021, a vaccine was defined as a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting the person from that disease. And then the term vaccination was defined as, quote, the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. And that, I would say, generally agreed with what most people thought when they heard those two words. However, in September, the CDC quietly changed their definitions. So that when you go online now, when you go over to the CDC's website, this is what it says. The word vaccine is now defined as, quote, a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases, while vaccination is defined as, quote, the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce protection from a specific disease. Now notice something. This new definition omits a very key word that was there previously, and that word is immunity. The new definition of being vaccinated no longer officially means that you are immune. And just for your reference, according to the CDC's own website, here's what the word immunity actually means. Quote, protection from an infectious disease. If you are immune to a disease, you can be exposed to it without becoming infected. And so, according to the previous definition, being vaccinated would mean that you are immune, meaning that you can be exposed to the disease without being infected. However, with the new definition of being vaccinated that was just introduced, your body is now only protected from a specific disease. It's not actually immune. Now, again, this is not new news. We reported on this development all the way back in September. However, according to these newly released emails that just came out of the CDC, we now have a clearer picture about why exactly they made this change. For instance, one employee over at the CDC, she wrote this in an email that was dated October of 2021, which is just a month before this change in definition was made. It says, quote, the current definition is being used by right-wing COVID-19 pandemic deniers to argue that mRNA vaccines are not vaccines. Then that same official also wrote, quote, the current definition was twisted to claim that the existing COVID-19 vaccines were not vaccines because they only prevented severe illness. According to statements like this, anyone who can read a definition and then realize that it doesn't match up with reality is lumped in as being right-wing. Regardless, though, in another email, Ms. Alicia Downs, who according to her LinkedIn profile is the lead health communications specialist over at the CDC, she wrote an email to another one of her colleagues on August the 19th saying that she needed to update this definition as well as others like it since, quote, these definitions are outdated and being used by some to say COVID-19 vaccines are not vaccines per the CDC's own definition. However, it appears that she actually did not receive a response to her email, and so then a few days later, she sent a second message which said this, quote, "The definition of vaccine we have posted is problematic, and people are using it to claim the COVID-19 vaccine is not a vaccine based on our own definition." And then, ironically, these emails reveal that another CDC official, a woman by the name of Valerie Morelli, she approved of the change of the word's definition, even though it seemed to differ greatly from the definition of the same word that she laid out in an earlier internal document. And in order to alleviate this discrepancy, here's what she wrote in an internal email within the CDC, quote, "If this is for the general public, I am good with the change." Now think about that for a moment. If this change is for the public, then she is okay with it. Meaning that in order to alleviate criticism, she approves of a different definition being made available to the public than the one that they're using internally. There are going to be two different definitions, one for the public, one for internal use, just to alleviate criticism from people who are able to read the definition that was on the website and notice that it does not align with what is actually happening on the ground. Now, regardless, we here at the Epoch Times, we did reach out to the CDC for comment on these newly obtained emails. However, they sent back to us the same boilerplate response that they sent to us several months ago when we first inquired about this change of definition for the first time, again, back in September. Here's what they wrote to us. The agency says the slight changes in wording for the definition have not impacted the overall definition, and that the previous definition could be interpreted to mean that vaccines were 100% effective, which has never been the case for any vaccine. So the current definition is more transparent and also describes the ways in which vaccines can be administered. Transparent indeed. If you'd like to read more about this change and what the word vaccine actually means, or if you'd like to read these emails that came out of the CDC that came from that same time period when they were making the change, I'll throw all that into the description box below this video for you to check out. And now lastly, since you've completed this episode of Facts Matter, I would highly recommend that you go on over to Epoch TV and check out an exclusive episode of Facts Matter that we just posted there over the weekend, wherein I went around New York City during an anti-vaccine mandate protest, and I spoke with the people, and I asked them why they were opposing the mandate, as well as why they were willing to lose their jobs rather than to get the shot. Here's a trailer for that episode.
Upwards of 1,000 people have come to protest the vaccine mandate.
Well, you're taking away choice. Once you start taking away choice, it's the beginning of communism, really. It wasn't until this new Governor Hochul, I call her Communist Hochul.
They're not anti-vaxxers. Some of them have taken the vaccine themselves, but they're against the mandate.
Educators for freedom. That's who we are. You know, many teachers have applied for their religious exemption, but was denied, which is unlawful on so many levels. It's unlawful.
The sign says we do not discriminate against any customer based on sex, gender, race, creed, age, vaccinated or unvaccinated.
You never had to get the flu shot. They never asked you for a passport.
We are free people. We will not be told what to do by government. This is not communist China. This is the United States. We are a republic.
Until next time, I'm Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.
If you'd like to check out that awesome episode, as well as all the other great content over on Epoch TV, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it. I hope you check it out. I hope you subscribe. And I hope that you join us on this journey of exploring this beautiful, beautiful world through honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. Now, lastly, if you haven't already, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already, in order to get this type of honest news content delivered directly into your YouTube feed, while YouTube still allows it. Also, consider hitting that notification bell so you can actually be notified of any new videos as we release them. And then lastly, if you have an Instagram account, I would consider following me at Epoch Times Roman. I publish behind-the-scenes research as well as spicy memes. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.